It's calm outside. In the day, or so that's passed, the weather seems to have also mellowed out. A thick layer of fresh snow coats everything, looking fluffy and inviting. A few clouds darken the sky overhead, but are nothing compared to the maelstrom that I got caught in. The occasional flakes that fall seem serene, not threatening. Of course, they pass right through me. Abigail leads me into the woods. I try not to pay attention to how I can't hear my footsteps in the snow, or how the cold doesn't bother me. It's convenient, sure, but it's wrong. The two of us walk side by side, deeper and deeper into the forest. This will be the farthest I've ever gone, since previously I'd never passed the church. Just like Morgan a few nights ago, Abigail seems to know exactly where she's going. Abigail, can you tell me a bit about what it's like now? Being a ghost and all? Abigail's face lights up and she claps her hands together. Her steps become an eager skip.
Of course, I'd be happy to.
She clearly means it.
Where to begin? I found it to be quite convenient, personally. As I said before, we're not ghosts, per se. Or at least, not in the conventional way. Which is to say, we're not dead. It's more like we're somewhere in between life and death. You and I are now fundamentally bound to the forest, and to everything else in it. In the forest, everything is connected.
She frowns deeply, puffing out her cheeks.
This is harder than I thought.
I laugh. I guess, even after centuries, she never expected she'd have to explain all of this to someone. It's fine. Take your time.
Everything in the forest is connected. The trees, the grass, the birds, the foxes. Everything. And that includes you and I, too.
Connected how? Abigail chews her lip as she tries to think of how to explain it. Her frown returns deeper than before. Finally, she just shrugs.
Magic.
Magic. That makes sense. Pleased, Abigail nods. I still don't know what to think. I've only just woken up. I don't know how long it'll take for me to process everything and accept it, or if I ever will. Everything she says makes sense, on a conscious level. I'm sure I could ace a test if someone were to ask me questions about it. But when I stop to think about how it affects me, about how these are now the restrictions and limitations that bind me, I stumble over nothing and clutch at my chest, feeling sick. But it's an impotent gesture. It doesn't help me feel any better. How? How can I be dead? How did this happen to me, of all people on Earth? This isn't fair. It isn't fair. I never wanted any of this. I never even wanted to be here. I can't keep my thoughts from spiraling. Every time I try to think about it, I'm just met with memories of dying and of fear. Fear for myself and for the future and what it might hold. Abigail rushes over, rubbing my back as she croons in my ear.
Madison, it'll be alright, I promise. I know it's a lot to take in, but it'll be okay. I'm here for you. I'm here.
I'm here. She repeats those words over and over, stroking my back until the moment passes. Dizziness fades in waves, and I slowly stand back up. In all, my little episode must have lasted seconds at most, but it felt so long.
Madison, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine now. Or at least better, thanks. Her hand doesn't leave my back.
Are you sure? We don't have to keep going right now. We could save this for another day.
I brush away the notion. It's fine. Let's keep going. If I just sit and do nothing, I'm sure I'd feel even worse.
If you're sure.
We resume our trek. The silence drags on for a while. Abigail shoots me glances every now and then, as if I'll disappear if she looks away for too long. In a morbid way, it's kind of funny. I looked at her the same way not too long ago, but she was bright and radiant, and I'm dead, I guess. It brings a question to the forefront of my mind. Earlier, Abigail stops. I try to avoid eye contact. You said something earlier about Tara. How it wouldn't be possible for Tara to even see me.
Correct.
She speaks with measured words. Despite how excited she's been, she's visibly holding herself back. Like any wrong word would set me off again. It's not too far from the truth. But I was able to see you, even before all of this happened. So why couldn't she see me? Abigail lights up again, a look of pride beaming across her face.
That was projection. I've had a lot of practice. I'd be happy to teach it to you too, but it took me decades. Some time to learn.
I see. Decades. Abigail laughs nervously, trying to hide her slip. We lapse into an uneasy silence again. I take deep breaths, trying to distract myself from the hundreds of questions weighing on my mind, but my breaths feel empty, the lack of cold wind glaringly absent if I focus on it. So, I focus on Abigail. She leads the way confidently. A passive smile rests on her face, and she looks more at ease now than I've ever seen anyone be. Every step she takes seems to push us forward, farther than any natural pace. The words she said earlier replay in my head, about how the forest will help take us to our destination. We pass through a tree, but when I look back, it's meters away, if not out of sight completely. Magic. Being able to simply pass through any obstacle we encounter makes the walk much faster. Even so, I automatically step over debris or turn my shoulder completely to avoid scraping the trunk of a tree when I can. I feel the heaviness in my chest start to fade as we trek on. Abigail catches my glance, smiles warmly. I smile back, genuinely now. Did you spend much time in the forest when you were alive?
I did. However, I never traveled very far. Why do you ask?
I was just thinking about how you know your way around so well. It kind of reminds me of the girl I met here in the village, Morgan.
I've had plenty of time to see it all. It's simple too, once you know how to do it. As long as you know where it is you're going, the forest will guide your way there. I'm certain you'll get the hang of it someday.
I force an agreeable smile. In spite of everything, talking feels good. Talking about anything, so I try to keep the conversation going. What was Eysenfeld like back then?
Much the same as it is today, as far as I can tell. Quiet and isolated, we rarely had any visitors, even news of the outside world, where the rest of the country was slow to arrive. But I longed for it, for the stories that would occasionally make their way to us. Sometimes friends of my father's would head to the city for a few weeks, taking the goods that we had grown and made to trade, and bringing back things we lacked. And they'd return with gifts for all of the children, my sister and I, or the little boy across the road. Gifts and stories about wondrous devices they'd seen, or about the marvelous people they'd met. When I was alive, I always wished to see it for myself someday. Instead, I had to satisfy myself with books and other people's stories.
Her voice trails off, ending with a hum of satisfaction, remembering something but not speaking it. I wait quietly. It doesn't feel like the kind of moment that I should interrupt. Soon enough, she looks over at me with what I'm come to think of as her typical smile.
I'm sorry. I hadn't really thought about these things in a while.
It's okay. I hope they're not painful memories. She shakes her head.
These ones aren't. What about you? There are so many things that I want to know, but hardly know where to begin asking.
Abigail points up to the sky, devoid of any clouds right now.
Machines soar overhead, day and night, but I've never known what they are. Or watching as Eysenfeld becomes more modern, but not understanding. I want to understand.
From the way the corners of her eyes glimmer with tears, it's clear just how badly she wants to know. It must be horribly frustrating. She mentioned machines overhead. She must mean airplanes and satellites. How unbelievable would it sound to her that enormous metal craft can fly through the sky and carry hundreds of people?
I'm sorry. Again, that can wait.
You're fine. I'm sure I'd feel the same way in your position. After we meet your friend, I'll tell you everything you want to know. Or at least everything I can. I'm not exactly the best storyteller, and I'm not very good at explaining why things work. But if that's still enough... I phrase it like a question, even though I already know what her answer will be. Sure enough, she springs toward me, skipping past like a stone.
Oh, would you? I'm sure you're wonderful at telling stories. I could tell from the way you read to me. Back at the church, do you remember?
Like I could forget. That's a day that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Is it? Why's that?
She crowds up close to me now. To be honest, she reminds me a bit of a film camera, zooming in then out, and leaping past to focus on something else. Well, that was the first day we spent time together, right? And that's when you showed me your name. Abigail goes very still, several times. She looks like she's on the verge of saying something. Her mouth fluttering or her half gesturing something, but each time she stops.
I suppose it was. I just didn't realize it was that significant to you.
Of course it was. That day changed everything for me. I bite my tongue from saying more. Things didn't exactly change for the better. Deeper and deeper we go, and the forest gradually grows quieter. The rustling of creatures underfoot gets less and less frequent, and then stop entirely. The birds chatter less, and then not at all. Even the wind settles down. Abigail is the only one who doesn't act any differently. She still hums to herself or glances over her shoulder to make sure I'm still there. Like I have anywhere else to go. As we get further into the woods, the snow is thinner, and some places are totally without it. There are even a few patches of green, something that I'm pretty sure shouldn't be possible given the weather. The trees, which have been growing claustrophobically close together, start to spread out a bit more. I gasp when I see what's ahead of us. A grove of immense trees, larger than any I've ever seen before, lies before us. Like the redwoods back in America, they're so huge as to seem to hold up the sky. Totally bereft of snow, a few defiant branches hold leaves. They cast shadows over Abigail and I, and everything around us. An aura of life pervades the area. My skin prickles. The sensation is vivid, running up my arms like a spark. More than the church, where we are now feels like a holy place, something sacred and primal. As we pass by, I have the distinct feeling that I'm being watched from all sides. The back of my neck is slick with sweat, and I brush my forehead as the pressure of being observed starts to hit me harder. What is this place? I don't mean to, but my voice comes out as a whisper.
We're at the center of the forest now. These trees are the oldest ones here. They're the ancestors of the rest. All of the life in the forest comes from here.
I believe it. There's a quiet vibrance to this place. I walk a little bit slower, feeling as if I don't want to cause a disturbance. I trail behind Abigail, who seems totally indifferent to the atmosphere. It makes sense, she's probably used to it, and this place's luster has worn off for her. I can't help but gape. Without the snow that I've gotten so used to elsewhere, this feels like a wholly different place, another world altogether. Abigail leads me around one of the massive trees and my jaw drops even further. There, crouched in a small clearing, is the forest spirit from the other night. The same one that stood in the storm and scared the hell out of Tara and me. Somehow, it's much smaller now than it was then, though still several feet taller than me. Yet, one look into its piercing red eyes and I know it's the same. It's been looking away, but turns to face us. Its body creaks and crackles as it moves, like an old door rattling in the wind. My breath catches in my throat as I fight down the instinctive rising terror. Pocks and scars decorate the bark that forms its skin. Though it has a vaguely human form, its body is clearly wooden. Little trees wind together, interlocking to shape its body. It regards me with some kind of indifferent stare, similar to when we first witnessed it at the church. The impossibly red glow of its eyes is subtle now, and the previously winding and dying trees look more like its body is merely hugging itself. I look to Abigail to see her reaction, but she just watches the two of us with a slight smile, waiting to see what happens. That's when it hits me. This is your friend?
That's right.
She acts as plainly as if she'd just introduced me to a fellow human, not a mystical creature. Abigail leaves my side to go to the spirit, and she nuzzles her head against his side like a cat.
This spirit is the guardian of the forest. It helped me save you, just like it saved me, long ago.
It shifts slightly to accommodate her. Standing a little bit taller, it makes no vocalizations though. Nothing close to speech. I see. I don't, really. Visions of its tall and imposing profile against the stormy sky really clash with what's in front of me now. But still, I know she's telling me the truth. I take a fraction of a step forward, expecting it to bare its teeth or warn me off somehow. It doesn't react though. Does it have a name?
If it does, I don't know it. I just think of it as the forest spirit.
To think back to how Morgan had first described it, as if the forest itself had come to life. I don't think she knew just how right she was. Its namelessness makes it feel even more wild and untamed. I can feel myself being regarded and judged by it, and I'm tempted to turn tail and run. I force myself to look up and meet its gaze. When it stands still, it's unnervingly silent. It reminds me of a grotesque scarecrow in a sense. From my peripheral vision, I can see Abigail look between the spirit and I, probably wondering if she should say something more, or knowing her, wondering what to say. I preempt her. I've come to say thank you for intervening and saving me. Abigail told me that you helped. I don't really know how I can ever repay you. I owe you my life, or, well, whatever's left of it. I'm not sure what I could even offer a supernatural tree spirit to begin with. Its eyes watch me, impassive. I don't know what happens now either. I'm still getting used to all this, but again, thank you. Then, not knowing what else to do, I bow stiffly and step backwards. Still, it doesn't react. The whole thing is awkward and uncomfortable, but as with everything else, I'm at a loss. I can't have a conversation with the thing, and the details of what exactly it did are sparse. It feels like a waste to have come all this way for just a few sentences. but I'm not sure it even understood those. It occurred to me that I have no idea how much the forest spirit knows, or even cares, about the affairs of humans. I guess it must care at least a little since I'm here. The spirit turns its head to face Abigail, who smiles and pats its side. She says something to it, but I'm too far away to hear what. Then, as wordless as ever, the spirit rises and lumbers off into the forest without a second acknowledgement. Abigail watches it go. Then she turns and faces me with a bright smile.
So, what did you think?
She has all the pride of a child with a new toy. I stare after the spirit, still barely visible between the trees. I don't really know what I think. I'm part grateful, part terrified, part shocked. When I saw it before, I thought it had to be a monster or something. It just seemed so ferocious and huge that I assumed it was evil. So seeing it like that is weird.
It's certainly intimidating at first. When we met, I was also rather fearful, but I quickly realized how kind and gentle it was, at least towards me.
I'm still brimming with curiosity over Abigail's own history, but she's made it clear that she doesn't want to tell me yet, so I won't pester her about it. Why wasn't it enormous this time?
It can make itself larger or smaller at will. The night you saw it, it must have had a reason.
And you're able to talk to it and understand it?
Not quite. I speak to it and it understands me, but it doesn't have any words or language. Some of its mannerisms I've picked up over time. We've had quite a long time to get to know each other after all.
Right. Abigail walks over and links her arms around mine. I startle at the touch, more so how casual she is about it.
Ready to go back to the church? Unless you'd rather stay here in the forest. I imagine you'd be more comfortable with walls and a roof around you for now, though.
Yeah, I would be. Let's go back. Arm in arm, she leads the way back.